you get from Saskatoon to Strathcona County
Yes.
Library?
So I did my first 2 years of university at U of S, and then I traveled for a year, which was very common then. We backpacked across Europe, and then when I got back, I was just ready for a bit of a change. My younger sister was already at U of A, and so I decided to move to Edmonton. I knew I wanted to go to library school after my degree too. So once I finished my BA, I applied for the library school in Edmonton, and it broke my heart because I got turned down and I was put on a waiting list. I had a little bit of experience in libraries at that point. I had worked as an undergrad part-time in the university library, but I was told I needed more experience to get in. So I immediately went to the Saskatoon Public Library, where I was spending the summer, and asked if I could volunteer in the children's department. And they said yes, and again, I loved it. You know, I really, really loved it. I mostly just shelved books, but I had opportunities to observe the story times, to, you know, answer a few questions from kids, things like that. So, and by the end of the summer, thank goodness, someone dropped out, or some people dropped out, and I got in. So that's how I ended up in Edmonton, and from there it's easy to imagine how I ended up in Sherwood Park. I mean, when that job came up, I had been wanting a children's librarian job for a year. I'd taken a couple of temporary jobs in libraries that were okay, but they weren't public libraries and they weren't children's. So the one that I did for the longest time was in the MAP library at U of A, cataloging atlases. And after a few months of that, I knew I didn't want to do that ever again, and I wanted to work with people. So then this job was posted, and I applied for it, and I still remember worrying because I hadn't heard back. And I actually phoned my mother and said, "Mom, I haven't heard. You know, what do you think I should do?" And she said, "Well, just phone her up and ask." Because I thought the interview had gone all right. It was Heather Bell Dowling, the first director here, who had interviewed me. And so I phoned her up and reminded her who I was, and she hired me over the phone. So, yeah, it was great. And I knew I'd gotten an absolutely fabulous job. I didn't realize how fabulous until I got right into it. The first location we were in was in a basement of a building. To be honest, I don't remember which building it was, but there were probably, I don't know, maybe 10 staff. And we didn't have an adult services librarian at that point. Heather Bell and I were the only librarians. And so I selected and selected and selected. I was fresh out of library school, and so I used the tools that had been introduced to me in my children's literature and acquisitions classes. And one I remember using a lot was the Wilson's Children's Catalog, which was an American publication, but designed just for that kind of a situation where you're setting up a new library. So it was, I think, called a core collection. So we had lots and lots of money, which was absolutely wonderful, and I could get multiple copies of all these great titles. So I ordered those. I ordered some British titles. There was not a lot of Canadian children's literature at that point. In the sort of 5 to 7 years that I was here, because I had a year's leave partway through to go and do my MLS at UBC, in that time you could see the Canadian children's literature start to grow. And so, you know, then we started to buy more of that. But when the very first start, there was a little, but there really wasn't a lot to buy. So, yeah, I would, you know, mark the journals, people place the orders. We had rows and rows of these sliding shelves that were supposed to save space, and as the books came in, they got put in those shelves. And then I would sometimes get to go with Heather Bell as the library was being built to see the space, which was gorgeous. We had these wonderful acrylic panels with animals on them. I'm trying to remember, it was a local artist. Savage maybe was the last name, but I could be wrong about that. Janvier did the the center part in the ceiling. And then we got this wooden book train belt that both held picture books and kids could sit in, and that was a big hit when the library opened. And lots of space. That was really exciting to see that come together. You know, it took time, but it was really, really exciting to see it get finished. So the whole thing was very exciting. You know, you knew this was a big adventure, really, and I knew that very few people would get this opportunity. And Heather Bell was great in that children's was not her interest. It's not lots of people's interest, and so she gave me lots and lots of independence.